Most people think monsters look like monsters. They don't. They look like the man waiting at the crosswalk. They look like the guy standing behind you in line. They look like me. In the summer of 1977, New York City was holding its breath, and I was the reason why. I remember the heat before I remember anything else. It clung to my skin like a second shadow. The air was heavy, unmoving. A city of millions living inches apart, yet totally alone. People think they're safe because they're surrounded by others. Safety is an illusion. I walked those streets every night. Another face no one bothered to remember. I watched couples in parked cars, laughing, leaning close, believing that moment belonged to them. I hated that certainty, because in this city, nothing belongs to anyone for long. The city was already angry. Crime, noise, decay. Everyone pretended the pressure wouldn't break them. I didn't feel like an outsider. I felt like a reflection. The city and I were the same, boiling quietly, waiting. The first night wasn't a choice. It was an inevitability. I stepped out of the darkness, and the sound split the night wider than I expected. Louder than it had any right to be. The silence afterward was worse. Thick, absolute. I didn't look back. I didn't need to. For the first time in my life, I felt awake. Fear moves faster than facts. It seeps into the headlines. It changes the way people glance over their shoulders. But being unseen is its own kind of violence. I wanted them to look directly at what they were afraid of. So I gave them a name. I watched it spread like a fever. Son of Sam. Printed in bold, repeated on every radio, spoken in terrified whispers in every bedroom. Every time they said it, I existed a little more. The summer tightened like a fist. Windows stayed shut even when the air was unbearable. Women dyed their hair. Couples stayed home. Parents waited for footsteps that never came. I walked through it all, unnoticed, sometimes close enough to hear them breathing. They ask about the voices. They want something supernatural, something easy to separate themselves from. But the truth is messier. Sometimes the voices were real. Sometimes they were just my own thoughts echoing too loudly. But they always agreed on one thing. The city was rotten. It didn't end with a cinematic chase. No grand confrontation, just a knock on a door and a room full of things I should have hidden better. When the metal closed around my wrists, I felt something I didn't expect. Relief. The summer was finally over. I looked at them and said it simply. Well, you got me. They locked me away, and the city exhaled. But don't be fooled. The heat never really leaves. If you pay attention, you can still feel it. The way shadows stretch longer in the dark. The way fear doesn't disappear, it just goes quiet. You tell yourself the monsters are gone, but I was just a man walking through New York. And there are always more men walking through the night, just waiting to be noticed. After the handcuffs clicked, the world finally got to see the face behind the headlines. His name was David Berkowitz. He wasn't a ghost or a monster from a movie. He was a 24-year-old postal worker who lived in a messy apartment in Yonkers. The voices he talked about? He later admitted he made some of that up to sound crazy. In 1978, he was sentenced to 365 years in prison. One life sentence for every murder he committed. He is still behind bars today, and he will likely die there. But his legacy changed New York forever. Because of him, the state passed Son of Sam laws to make sure criminals can't get rich by selling their stories to books or movies. He wanted to be famous, but the law ensured he'd never see a penny from his crimes. New York eventually cooled down. The crime rates dropped. In the 70s became a memory. But for the families of the victims, the summer of '77 never truly ended. The physical heat went away, but the cold reality of what he did stayed behind.